I was dreaming about the ocean. Marjot and I lay in bed. I was pretty tired, but since I was sleeping, that was alright. Marjot woke me up for a little fun time that night. Things were peaceful overall. Marjot got up and went right to research. She was working on the Starflight basics yet. She was hell-bent on figuring that out. I slept in that day. Marjot had a beer around 8 a.m. She said there's no time like now, and I couldn't really disagree too much. I harvested a little rice that was nearby. Started making some advanced components so we'd have some extras. Marjot had another beer in the afternoon. And then she got to the business of smelting. We had a bunch of scrap steel around and we didn't have a big supply. I went and used the telescope for a while. Planned on doing some cleaning. And Marjot focused on the research. After I got done, it was back to the advanced component. And then we were both off to bed. Both feeling pretty good, nothing to complain about. I woke up for a little while in the middle of the night, worked on that component, then I got back to bed. Marjot got up about 4 a.m., had a meal, and went back to research. I got up, worked on those advanced components. Marjot kept on researching. I was just going to make a few in case we needed to build something else. Once that was done, decided I'd better do some mining. We needed a bunch of steel, lest our traps go down and us not be able to rebuild them. Marjot took a break, messed around with the game of Ur. I went in and said hi before I went to bed. She came and joined me not too long after. I was a little crabby about the mess. Marjot was feeling like she was stuck indoors, hadn't been outside in a while. When I got up, I went and did some mining, hauled in what I could, found Marjot researching when I got back. Decided to toss some horseshoes for a minute. It's always a good time. Take a little break from the daily grind. Marjot was making great progress. And about that time, solar flare struck. All the power went out. Well, we decided maybe it was time and go open up that creepy building. So I set up near it. Marjot set up in a spot where she had a good line of fire. And then I took the wall apart. Turns out there was a bunch of insects in there, guarding some weird looking caskets. Same kind of caskets came out of one of them ships. We're still sitting in the dirt nearby. We started shooting at the aliens. They were falling for the traps, but the traps weren't doing much to them. So we killed a few that way. Just left 2 alive. I told Marjot to run back. I'd play hopscotch with them since I'd be so much faster than them. I was trying to distract them from chasing after Marjot, which was easy. They didn't seem too bright. So I ran around, shot at them, hiding behind rocks or trees. And I did some fair damage to them. They were both pretty weak. Marjot turned around, decided she'd do some shooting at him as well. Since it didn't seem like they were going to be able to get a hold of us here. They got pretty close to me once. Marjot got pretty close to shooting me as well. But fortunately with these bionics, I can dodge like crazy. Those insects ended up going after our alpaca. One of them. Beating the poor thing up pretty good. We didn't even think that would happen. How do they know that alpaca was in cahoots with us? It's a fair question, I guess. Well, while the fight was going on, we were shooting the insects up. Man, those things are big and mean. Tough as hell, too. So we got that done. Decided to run on over there and destroy their hives. Turns out we probably should have saved the alpaca. But oh well. The poor thing's gonna die. So we killed the hives. It left us some insect jelly, for whatever that's worth. And we got what we could hauled in. There are all kinds of futuristic items in there we could explore. We did get the alpaca rescued. I tended it up. Still working on my medical skill. About that time an eclipse happened. We rebuilt some of the traps. We weren't going to rebuild them all though. We didn't know what meanness would come out of those caskets. So we wanted some defense against it. The alpaca looked like it would recover just fine. It had bled a bit, but Marjot got back to research. I finished up the last of the traps. It had been a heck of a day, running around shooting. Marjot was off to bed, and while she was laying down, a whole heap of those aliens showed up once again. I don't know where these things come from in such huge numbers, or why, but they do, and it sucks. With the traps set up and the guns, we're typically alright. So they came for us. One of our alpaca was still outside. It didn't have time to make it in before the fast ones got to it. And it got killed, as you'd expect. We tried not to let it go to waste though. The aliens were coming in on the traps. We were shooting. They were getting too close. We got uncomfortable and took off running. More of them showed up then. Fortunately, it wasn't as big of a group. Still could be a problem though. As they started entering our home area, the guns cut loose. Did a pretty good job taking them out. Only one was still standing. Looked like it was going for the alpaca. These things are so tough. They always stand back up on their own. They heal like nobody's business. There was another fast one coming through the trap hallway. We were gearing up to give it the business. And between us and the guns, down it went. And a couple more were coming. One of the big ones. One of the tough black ones. But they went down, as you'd expect. And we were going to have to go around and shoot all the ones that hadn't quite died. Marjot was much better at that than I was. She could pretty much snipe them out. One shot, one kill when they were on the ground. I could shoot all day and barely hit the damn things. So, I shot at one. Marjot mostly killed the rest. She eventually decided to help me out. And we got the job done. Once again, we were going to have a ton of cleanup to do. Traps to rebuild. Blood everywhere. Acid blood, too. Our alpaca had been spared. There was dead stuff all over the place, but we couldn't take it. We decided to go to bed. 2 battles in a row was a little too much for us. But with all the excitement, we had some fun that night. Trade ship was passing by about that time. I made a note to call them when I woke up. And we had some weapons to sell. Not a lot though, so we didn't really do a lot of trading. We both watched some TV that morning together. I could smell that the beer was ready to be taken out of the barrel, so I planned on that next. The eclipse ended about that time. I put the beer away. And we got to the business of hauling all the alien bodies out. For what felt like the umpteenth time. We'd have to burn these things at some point. Pretty gross to look at. When they were all hauled, we started rebuilding traps. And we were off to bed about 11 o'clock again. Both feeling relatively alright. I was still a little short on what I felt like I needed to do the bionic installs in Marjot, so I'd have to work on some more medical stuff. We got a quest. Somebody nearby needed something, but we decided to ignore it. Person was passing by about that time. Older lady. Looked like she'd be a nice person to hang out with, but we'd warn her about the dangers here. I'm sure she'd move on. After the traps were built, most of them anyway, we'd run out of steel, so I had to go mine. Marjot started repairing the walls, and when I had enough steel, she rebuilt the trap. Then she decided to have herself a beer. Kitchen was a mess, so she was going to do some cleaning too. I spent the whole day mining pretty much, but we had tons of steel now. And then I went inside and had myself a beer. I butchered up that alpaca, and I was hoping to get some cooking done before its meat spoiled. We didn't have any space for it in our freezer. We hauled in steel, had some meals, and then we were off to bed. We were wet, walking through the water. There was a prisoner escape plot nearby. We weren't going to get ourselves involved in that, most like. Seemed like that could be trouble. We don't need any more trouble. We got enough with these aliens. Don't need the humans trying to kill us all the time too. Not that they haven't done enough. The squirrel killed itself on a trap, which Marjot rebuilt. I cooked a bunch of meals. And we were still working on repairing walls and stuff. Alien blood everywhere. When that was done, Marjot got to cleaning. I started working on the rice, which was ready to go again. And I was feeling pretty good. Marjot was cleaning away. Marjot hit the hay. I got up, despite the dark. Started harvesting the rice for a little while. And when that was done, I hauled it in and had a meal. Got back to planting some new stuff. I hit the hay. Marjot was watching TV. I could hear her in there laughing at some show or another. And then she got back to cleaning. I got back to planting. Somebody contacted us with an assassination request again. And people on this planet, I tell you, it's a harsh place. We cleaned for quite a while, trying to get everything tidy again. It had been a while since we did a thorough clean. Then I went and did some more mining. Wasn't much nearby, but I was going to get the rest of it mined out right away. So I got that done, hauled in what I could, had myself a meal. We were still thinking about going over and opening those caskets at some point here. Marjot figured out the basics of starflight at that point. I was well impressed. Next up, she went for long-range mineral scanning. She said she needed to figure out how to build simpler scanners before she could build advanced ones for the ship. I just shook my head and pretended like I knew what she was talking about. It was a bunch of dead insects where we'd shot them up. Marjot wanted to get them put away, but it seemed like a waste of time. One of our guns broke down. We gotta keep those things working. Marjot fixed it, being that those things about all that's kept us alive. And then we were off to bed. We had some fun together that night, about 1 a.m. And some kind of shockwave came across the land. A whole bunch of turtles went mad. Started coming for us. Now, turtles aren't the fastest thing. Actually, giant land tortoises. But in the interest of not losing any traps, we decided to run on out and shoot them up as best we could. They're pretty tough, those thick shells. It certainly wasn't anything we couldn't handle, considering what we'd been through with the aliens. Despite their slow speed, it was hard to hit those little buggers. We'd eventually get there. And it's also hard to find them. Damn things move so slow. Well, we tracked him down, got over to him, gave him the business, scared a big cat that was laying there as well. Marjot decided she was going to do some cloud watching in the early morning. She said it was peaceful this time, nobody around. I pointed out that there's rarely anybody else around. I did the same, actually. I didn't tell her though. She was doing some research by then, and some cleaning. There was a whole bunch of plasteel nearby. I was going to get to that, and some chip chunks fell right near our wall. That was useful. The more components we could get on hand, better off we'd be. Not sure how many we'd need, but it would be a lot. Marjot hit the hay about 6 p.m. I had myself a meal and followed her to bed. I was wet from crossing the water, but otherwise didn't have anything to complain about. It got really cold out. The plants I'd planted started dying. Marjot kept on researching. I decided to do some cooking since we were out of tasty meals. We had a deer and a squirrel. I butchered those up. And there was a bunch of stuff to put away. Leather from all the animals I butchered. So I made a meal, hauled some stuff around, made a bunch more meals. Marjot came in, sit by me, chat. I decided to go out and use the telescope and look into the snowstorm that was happening at the time. Marjot chilled out inside. She didn't like being cold. And I kept right on making meals till I decided we had plenty for the minute, which it seemed like we did. After that, it's back to the business, mining out that plasteel. Marjot was in bed. It's pretty early, but I guess she works her butt off. No one can complain. I hauled in the plasteel. I was hungry. Gonna need a meal. So I sat down and had one at our table. And then I was off to bed as well. Once again, wet from crossing the stream, but otherwise I didn't have any complaints. Marjot got up and had a meal, did some cleaning, and went right back to research. She liked to keep the research room as tidy as could be. Said she seemed to get better results that way. I got up and went right back to mining on plasteel. Stuff takes forever, and that's what we did for a while. Marjot had to spend some time working with our last alpaca, trying to keep it tame. And then she tossed some horseshoes for a little bit. She was smiling. Must have been happy. I got the plasteel brought in and decided to head back out, mine some more. Marjot had some success with that alpaca while I was having a beer, and Marjot had gone off to bed. She was feeling pretty good, and I must say I was too, so much so that I decided to keep working, despite it being late. These bionics really mess up your metabolism. I don't need as much sleep as I used to, but I sleep at odd times. I was sleeping, Marjot was researching, occasionally stopping for a beer, and finally we decided to go crack into those caskets just to get outside, see what it was about. Those dead aliens were pretty stinky. So I went inside to open the nearest one, and then I was going to book it outside. A bunch more insects popped out. Some fella popped out of one, seemed mad, doing some kind of drugs. The insects didn't seem too hostile. Neither did the other person that popped out, so I opened the door for her so she wouldn't get killed on a trap. And then we went to wait for Mr. Powder Nose to come over. He had a shotgun, and I didn't want to get involved with that. He did have some really good armor on. We were going to have a hard time dropping that fellow. Well, we kept shooting at him, though. He was pretty well injured. I figured if we could drop him, we could get that equipment off him. And sure enough, we took him down. He was cursing, yelling, mad as all hell that we'd woken him up. Buddy, how long you been in that thing? Don't you want to see what the world's like? I guess not, based on how horrible it is. He dropped a shotgun, he even had some gold in his pocket. Marjot was going to get that stuff hauled in. The insects didn't seem to mind us, and the lady was just going to wander right off, go about her business, so we didn't cause her any trouble. I rescued the fella, decided to tend him up. I still needed as much practice as I could get doing medical stuff. I was getting close though. This fella seemed to be in pretty bad shape. I felt a little bad for what we'd done to him, but I was getting more confident with my medical skills every day. I took his equipment off, left him nude. I felt a little bad for that, but I'd have to get him some clothes made at some point. We had our tailor bench off, so I turned that on. And then I started making some clothes for that fella. Marjot went out and started deconstructing the traps and walls we'd built. A whole bunch of pemmican came down out of the sky about that time. There's a bunch of slag too. I finished a pair of pants. Started working on a shirt. One of those big weird thrumbo creatures showed up. They seem friendly enough if you don't mess with them. So, we decided to leave them. Don't need any more issues here. I picked up the clothes I made. Went and dropped them in that guy's room. Maybe he'd get himself dressed. Marjot was feeding him a meal. Then she did some cleaning up in there, and then she was off to bed. And Thrumbos are wandering around. Kind of cute. Just don't get close. Cold snap ended about that time. I went off to bed. We had some fun that night as well. Some ram went mad nearby. Sadly, it was too close for us to stop it from destroying one of our traps. And that was going to be that. It didn't die though, so we were going to have to do something about it. I got to thinking, maybe if I rescued it, I could practice my medical skills a little more. And that seemed like a good plan. It wasn't going to last long. So I rescued the thing, brought it inside. Decided not to use any medicine on it though. That seemed like a poor play, considering we needed it for super bass, which is what that fella called himself. He was crabby at being our prisoner, but he was happy not to be dead. So I tended up the ram, and then I was off to bed at about 11 o'clock. Marjot came in too. I had been thinking about that shirt I made for Super Bass, and it was so nice. I decided to wear it myself. I just made him another one. I sat down and had myself a beer. The ram was healing up just fine. I don't know what we're going to do once it starts wandering around in here. I was having a beer. Marjot was tossing horseshoes. I went to feed Super Bass. And then I was going to go pick up some of that slag that was laying around. There was another dead ram over there. We had traps to rebuild, thanks to the ram. These animals never seem to fail. Go over there and die on our traps. I don't know why they want to be in here so much, but apparently they do. We were deconstructing the walls and the traps. We deconstructed those caskets as well that those people had been in. And at that point, someone called us with a peace talks quest. It was pretty close, but neither of us were very confident in our social abilities, so we were going to have to pass on it lest we do more harm than good. The ram was up, walking around. Well, you're gonna have to shoo him out of here or something. Marjot was also walking around. She was having herself a meal, and then she was gonna do a bunch of cleaning. And then she was off to bed. Neither of us had anything to complain about. I got up, ate, replanted the cotton that had died in the cold, decided we both needed some new flak gear. Be nice to have some protection while we're getting shot at. When Marjot woke up, she started messing with the telescope. Despite it being midday, sun was up. So I worked on flat gear. Marjot worked on smelting. She wanted to put on that fella's armor, but I told her we should keep that. If it gets worn out, we're going to have to make our own. And that's quite a project that involves some pretty serious supplies that we don't really have. Although we were getting there with my mining of the plasteel. I went to bed about 10 o'clock. Some kind of ship fell out of the sky nearby. Started a big fire. Super Bass was in there yelling. He had heard it happen. He wanted to go over there and try and kill it. I think he was missing his drugs pretty badly. And he just needed to get some kind of adrenaline rush. I'm sure he could hear us having some fun in bed through the wall vent. He didn't look too happy, but oh well. I went and spoke with him, and he agreed he'd join us and behave himself. As long as we'd give him the chance to go destroy that ship. So that's what we did. He found himself some clothes, picked up his old shotgun. We didn't let him have his armor back. I was working on some additional flak gear, or fancy helmet. Marjot kicked Super Bass right off the research bench. She said that was her work. He had to get out of there. I was trying to finish up, working on the steel. Super Bass had taken that huge gun Marjot bought me from the aliens. Went and started shooting at that ship till some aliens popped out of it. Turns out he wasn't that good of a shot, maybe due to the rain. One of them aliens shot him right in the head. He seemed to be alright, but he was bleeding pretty good. So I was going to have to get myself back and get him tended. On the upside, I'd get a little more practice. I don't know why that dude was so hell-bent on getting himself killed, but turns out he was. So we turned where we'd been keeping him into his bedroom for the time being. He didn't make it back. He went down. I decided to get over there and rescue him ASAP. Our alpaca was killed. It had wandered too close to those alien robot things. I don't know how they knew that alpaca belonged to us. We had to do something about that ram that was hanging out as well. So when I got Super Bass put in bed, it was time to get him tended up. I was getting more confident in my medical abilities every day. And I almost felt confident enough to finally start installing bionics into Marjot. Marjot went to pick up that alpaca. She almost got herself shot by the darn robot things. I was going to have a talk with her about the risk she was putting herself in. She's this crazy now. Wait till she becomes the bionic woman. The alpaca was laid inside. I decided to go for a walk. Those robots were wandering around, just waiting for a target apparently. One of our power lines went kaput at that point. But I got the fire put out and got the repairs done. Still a little bit of plasteel to be mined. So I ran out to work on that. Things are pretty chaotic right now, with Super Bass laid up and injured. Me running around. Mine and plasteel. Robots running around. Marjot was off to bed at midnight, just before I decided to join her. It had been a hell of a handful of days. I almost felt confident doing the operations I was going to have to do on Marjot. Superbass is pretty beat up, and he was still saying he wanted to get over there and get a piece of those robots, even more so now that they'd shot him in the head. We were all probably going to have to go deal with that issue, and hopefully none of us got killed. I didn't really like Superbass, so we'd send him on his way at some point. But for now, we'd let him hang out.